remember 2 years ago when I said I would possibly be playing one of these 3 characters in a D&D campaign and ended up rebuilding Inkashi, my first D&D character, instead? And remember last year where I had 2 brand new D&D characters for 2024 and then only one of them actually got to exist in a universe and the other one kind of just disappeared? And remember how about a month ago I made 5 really cool unique D&D characters that I said I would like to take into the next campaign I was allowed into? Well, guess what? I have successfully brought an entirely different D&D character into the session 0 of a campaign, and she's like none of the concepts that I have brought to you before. So buckle up, kiddos, because we are going to space. Jumping straight into our drawing, I hope it's obvious from the thumbnail of this video, but hey, just a warning. This video is about a bug, particularly a praying mantis inspired character, and there will be a significant amount of bug related visuals throughout the drawing. So if for any reason that bothers you or puts you in a state of distress, feel free to enjoy one of my many other videos that I have, or just take it easy. I'll be back next week with significantly fewer bugs in my content. So with that warning sufficiently laid out, let me do some explaining here. Rusauka and the squad of very fun gothic alternative style characters are not canned. They are still very, very much next in line for whatever campaigns will cross my path in the future, hopefully near future. The character featured in this video was actually in the works a really, really long time before any of those characters were ever even conceptualized. To be honest, I just wanted to wait and be sure that the character I'm drawing was actually going to show up in a campaign before I fully committed to sharing her on the internet, because honestly at this point I feel like I'm more of a hypothetical D&D channel instead of an actual D&D channel with the number of unfinished ideas and unused characters that I have. But as of this video coming out, this character has officially made it through session 0. She's met the other party members, the lore has been established, I had my very first dice roll with her, it was a 4, and we have a tentative date for our next session, so it's all set in stone now. A couple of months ago, one of the players in Fing's campaign asked if she could try DMing out. That's really just how they get you. 1 minute you're testing things out in a one-shot and suddenly you haven't played anything besides an NPC in the last 2 years. But she really wanted to do a Spelljammers themed campaign, so magic, space travel, alien characters, fun backstories. And I thought, you know, it's not every day that someone chooses to run a space campaign, so let's test out some of the fun new character options that Spelljammers has to offer. So obviously I chose the monstrous alien insectoid race Thri-Kreen. Thri-Kreen are very fun in terms of stats. First off, you can choose the size that you want to be. That can be medium or small. You have a chameleon carapace, so your AC is 13 plus your dex modifier, and you can also change the color and texture of your carapace to match your surroundings and get yourself advantage on stealth checks. You have 4 arms, granted 2 of them can only hold light weapons and objects and perform simple tasks, but still it's pretty cool. And you don't have to sleep at all. You just have to make sure you're not doing anything strenuous in order to gain the benefits of the long rest. And last but not least, you have 120 feet of telepathic communication, and you can talk with any creature that can understand any language. This is an ability granted because Thri-Kreen mandibles are not made for speaking non-Thri-Kreen languages. The only thing that is a little bit disheartening about being a Thri-Kreen is that they have a very short lifespan. They live to about 30 years, reaching adulthood after 4 years, which is very little in the grand scheme of things considering how long some D&D races live. But my character has decided to make the most of both her very short lifespan and lack of a need to sleep, and at a whopping 8 years old, which to be fair is nearly a third of her life, she has become a renowned doctor and researcher working as a combination of medicinal chemist, epidemiologist, and pharmaceutical engineer. And she works at E1C, which is one of the most famous science and research institutes on all of the planet of Renoth, where she resides. So let me introduce you to Dr. Klaktcha Pak'chka, who generally introduces herself to people as KP for the convenience of those without Thri-Kreen mouth structures. She was always quite a smart creature, even as a little hatchling nymph, but even more than just natural inclinations, she always had a passion for problem solving, specifically if the problem solving happens in a lab. Her favorite area of research is disease prevention and bridging the biological gap between planets. There are many planets with incredibly delicate ecosystems, and explorers can very easily disrupt that and bring tragedies to entire planets. Or, alternatively, explorers might be exposed to new diseases that don't hurt the native denizens of a planet but are deadly to those who didn't grow show up in the environment. KP works incredibly hard with her team to create medical solutions to prevent unnecessary death and destruction across the galaxy. But despite being incredibly good at and loving her job, she does hide a deep, dark secret. She's very allergic to peanuts, and she's incredibly embarrassed about it because try as she might, she can't create a cure for her allergy. She's never worried about asking for cross-contamination prevention in restaurants and things like that, and she carries EpiPens for emergencies, but she will do almost anything to avoid admitting out loud that she actually has an allergy. Another interesting fact about KP is that she has super illegible handwriting. I think as a doctor, it just makes sense. It hasn't really come up in the game for any reason, but you know what, I'm waiting for the perfect opportunity to drop that little tidbit of information. It might never come up, but I'm just gonna quietly keep my fingers crossed that the perfect opportunity does arise. As you can see in the drawing, KP has a couple of small piercings in her chitin, but they are not only fashionable, they are functional. This was a fun little bit of technology that the DM allowed me to have. Since KP often has to interact with a large group of people for meetings or conferences or a scientific presentation, she doesn't actually prefer to use her Thri-Kreen telepathy to talk to people, especially groups. Instead, she has a little device that she can turn on to automatically translate her voice into common. While it is possible to store information of different languages that KP already knows on it, its most fun feature is actually that it has a bunch of different preset accents, kind of like Siri, I guess. So if KP isn't feeling her usual voice, she can switch it up from time to time, just for fun, which is honestly just as much of a treat for me as it is for KP. And for the moment you've all been waiting for, her class and subclass. What cursed combination of abilities to get to a very specifically situational task is Lady Splitchin trying to achieve with her character today? Well, she's a monk with the subclass Way of the Open Hand. That's it. That's the whole build. Sorry to disappoint with the most normal, standard... Oh, hi Bizel. Hello. You can't... buddy. Sorry to disappoint with the most normal monk build that you can possibly imagine, but in my defense, I don't play monks super often, and when I try to, for one reason or another, the campaigns tend to not pan out. Which is not to say I'm not excited to play a monk, or that I'm pulling my punches or flurry of blows because I expect the campaign to fizzle out. That's not the case at all, just that I built this character more around a lore concept than an ability, which is what I usually do when I build a character. Every once in a while, we all gotta fall into creating the most stereotypical character of all time, just as we so often fall into the emo edgelord character trap. And so what if I've made an Orchid Mantis themed Thri-Kreen that's a Way of the Open Hand monk? I love her. Now I know, some of you might be thinking, she's a researcher, she's a scientist, isn't that just the most wizard coded you can possibly be? And also, Lady Splitchin, you love to play spellcasters. It's true, I love to play spellcasters, but this was my one chance that I was 100% sure that I at least would get to play a few sessions where I got to not at all be a spellcaster in any capacity. And then in terms of lore reasons, I think KP at some point in earning her doctorate, or possibly multiple doctorates, she ended up getting really stressed and depressed from all the time that she was spending being hunched over at her desk, constantly studying for exams and classes and things. So at some point, to min-max her serotonin, she signed up for a martial arts class as a way to relieve stress and also keep her body active. Okay, enough yapping about D&D. Let's talk about the drawing and design process. As previously mentioned, she is heavily inspired by the Orchid Mantis, which I know it's an overdone design, but I am such a sucker for a pretty pink woman in STEM. And from the start of me creating her, I always imagined that she would be bright pink. That being said, there are hundreds and hundreds of absolutely gorgeous mantises out there. I know Thri-Kreen are specifically mantis inspired, but if you even expand that flavor to a wide range of different types of bugs that kind of suit the premise. There are just so many absolutely beautiful options out there. Of course, there is the chameleon aspect of the carapace, which means that she can actually just change color whenever she wants for camouflage purposes. But, you know, something about picking an exceptionally pretty or cute base design is just nice. Having this sort of centaur-like shape is not super standard for Thri-Kreen. In most official art, they have a very upright humanoid shape with no protruding bug abdomen. But I'm going to be taking up all of my allotted D&D 5 feet cube, thank you very much. No, it was purely for aesthetic reasons. I just think it looks neat, and I did run it past the DM and she was totally fine with it. I also just am fond of the idea of her either having to seam rip the sides of her lab coats or having to special order a lab coat for Thri-Kreen that happen to have bug abdomens. You know, for someone who spends a lot of time drawing humans, I actually really enjoyed drawing KP in all of her alien bugginess. Figuring out which parts of her are malleable or jointed and which parts are hard carapace and what colors little bits would be was just so enjoyable. It's like a very fun mix of drawing mechs but not having to draw realistic machinery and drawing body parts without having to worry about anatomical accuracy, and the added bonus of it all being in a funky color with alien textures, and y'all know I love good textures. Also, as a totally on purpose detail, and not at all because I didn't want to keep the flipping the canvas back and forth and making the speed draw footage miserable to watch, she has a lot of organic shapes throughout her design that are not perfectly symmetrical on her halves. Her right arm has sharper spikes, one of her left antennae is a little longer, even the shapes around her joints are a little different between the sides. Like I said, very intentional design work. It's giving a sense of organic shapes. This is not a result of laziness at all. So in the last minute or so I have this drawing, I've only played one session with KP, but I would still love to give you a little insight into the world that the DM has created. It's a planet that is gradually coming to the end of its life, and the largest city on the planet, Marisia, is currently in a heavy debate about what needs to be done to save the inhabitants. Part of the city wants to set off into the stars and find a new planet to call home, trying again, having learned more about sustainability and with our new incredible technological advancements. The other half believes that we have no right to take over another planet just because we're struggling with ours, and we must push to find scientific breakthroughs here on Renoth to save our society. Somehow, Dr. Klaktcha, Pak'chka, why did I do this? A musically talented Thri-Kreen named Wisp, a tiny but adventurous Hadozi named Kebi, a human-sized blue snail named Ugo, and a very short and rotund autonome called Steve are at the center of it all. And that brings us to the end of our video of KP, my pretty pink buggy monk, who I already love. I've played her for 2, maybe 3 hours max, and I adore her. I spent an hour-long drive just practicing a bunch of different voices that I wanted for her, and she turned out to be everything I wanted and more. And same with the drawing. It's a little wonky, I'll admit it, but I don't count that against myself. It's not like I draw bugs very often, and I think my favorite part of this entire drawing is her eyes. I like the little hexagons in it. I think it's neat. But hopefully I'll get to do an update video on her sometime in the future and let y'all know what kind of shenanigans this funky little party gets up to. Maybe I'll do a video where once I get to know them all a little better, I can draw the rest of the party, or maybe I'll do a digital version of the D&D journals. Now, wouldn't that be interesting? But who knows? Not me.